Number 10. Kaz II. The yacht Kaz II was discovered drifting aimlessly near the Great Barrier Reef in Australia with no one on board. It would have made a little bit of sense if only a single person was missing, but all 3 of the crew members have vanished without a trace. It turned into a national mystery, with nobody sure what happened to the crew of the Ghost Yacht. Some claim that the trio on board had faked their own disappearances to collect insurance money, while others suggested that they either died at the hands of drug smugglers or pirates. As crazy as it is to think that a crew of a yacht could be besieged by pirates in this day and age, it does still happen. One of the more unusual theories was that a paranormal event occurred, with the crew either being abducted by aliens, sailing through some kind of otherworldly portal that transmitted them to another dimension, or simply disintegrating into thin air for no reason. Alas, the mystery of the Kaz II was solved recently when a coroner in Townsville, Queensland, finally confirmed that the 3 friends drowned in a freak accident. Even though their bodies have never been discovered, the coroner believes they went overboard and couldn't get back onto their boat. He based his assessment on the evidence, saying that one of the people probably fell overboard while trying to untangle a fish line from a propeller. The second man fell while trying to rescue him. Then when the third man tried to turn the boat around to rescue the 2 guys in the water, the boat swung out, hit him, and knocked him overboard as well. Number 9. The Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste is the most famous ghost ship in history and one of the most enduring nautical legends. The incredible mystery began in 1872 when the British brig Dei Gratia discovered an empty boat floating about 500 miles from the Azores. It was the Mary Celeste, which had left New York 8 days before and should have already been in Italy. When the crew of the Dei Gratia boarded the ship, they discovered something terrifying. All of the charts had been tossed overboard. The belongings of the crew were all still there, and the only lifeboat was missing. There was almost 4 feet of water at the bottom of the ship, and its cargo of industrial alcohol was undamaged. There was only a supply of food and water for about 6 months. There was no sign of the crew, and nobody could figure out what happened to them. Fast forward to modern times, and we still have no idea what happened to the Mary Celeste. But there are some theories. Some say mutiny. Some say pirates. And some even say the sailors were attacked by a brutal sea monster that picked them off one by one. There was even a story floating around for a while that the crew was killed by a pair of psychopathic murdering brothers. However, modern historians, particularly a researcher named Anne McGregor, said that the crew almost certainly abandoned ship abruptly for fear it would sink. However, the question of why has still yet to be answered. Number 8. SS Orang Madon. The story of the SS Orang Madon is nothing short of horrifying. In fact, I would go so far as to say whatever happened to this mysterious boat was impossible. It went down in the 1940s, and accounts vary depending on your source. The most accurate account available is that the Dutch vessel was passing through the Strait of Malacca when something tragic happened. Ships nearby received a distress call detailing that the officers and the captain were dead. The whole crew, dead. Then, whoever was operating the radio uttered, "I die," and that was the end of the distress call. When the rescuers boarded the vessel, they found a massacre. The crew was dead, and their bodies were strewn across the decks. They were also found petrified in final moments of fear, with their faces turned to the sky and their teeth bared as if they had died from fright. Even the dog on board was dead, frozen in the middle of a deep growl. Unfortunately, the ship burst into flames after the rescuers boarded it. They had no choice but to evacuate. Moments later, the ship exploded with tremendous force and sank into the ocean. Not a trace of it has been seen since. The big question remains, what could have been so horrifying to kill the crew and the dog, seemingly without touching them? There are a lot of theories, from aliens to Cthulhu, and even some that say the ship never even existed in the first place. Number 7. The Jenny. The last entry in the Jenny's captain's log was as follows. May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive. The Jenny set sail in 1822 and was missing in 1823. Not discovered again until 1840 by a whaling ship. At the time of its discovery, the Jenny had been stuck in ice for nearly a decade. It was frozen in the Arctic, along with the petrified bodies of the crew members. The entire ship was mummified, the crew frozen in time. Captain Brighton of the whaling vessel discovered the captain's log on the captain's desk, with the pen still in the frozen captain's hand as he tried to finish his final entry. But here's where the ship became a ghost. The whaling vessel had no choice but to abandon it. The thing was horribly ruined by being stuck in the ice for 7 years, and there just wasn't anything they could do. After all, the crew was already dead. But after they left, that was the last anyone ever saw of the Jenny. Nobody has seen it in 200 years, with some speculating it still roams the ocean even today, her frozen crew trapped in their own worst hell. What do you think happened to the Jenny? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. The American Star. On the west coast of Fuerteventura, there is a wrecked ghost ship that once went by the name the American Star. It was a luxury cruise vessel and is today almost completely submerged by the rolling waves. The ocean liner began its life in 1939 under the name SS America, baptized by Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. The ship changed its name in World War II to the USS West Point, and it went through the entire war without taking any damage. Then, the boat was converted back into a cruise ship, but over the years, the ship was renamed again and again until the 1970s, when the ship began to get a little too old. It lost its charm. By the 90s, the ship had been purchased and sent to Thailand to be turned into a luxury hotel. A tugboat had the job of towing the ship to Southeast Asia, but on the way, the convoy encountered a violent storm near the Canary Islands. The American Star was destroyed. No matter how hard they tried, the ship could not be rescued. The crew had to be evacuated by helicopter. Ever since then, the ship has remained in the exact same spot. The locals have since changed its name to El Barco Fantasma, which translates roughly to the ghost ship. In the early days of the ship being wrecked off the coast, it became quite the local attraction. However, some people allegedly died when trying to explore the ship. This is where it got its creepy new name from, as the locals say that the souls of the explorers are still trapped in the rapidly sinking vessel. Number 5. Ryuun Maru. Back in 2011, when Japan was hit by the brutal tsunami, they lost many of their boats. One particular vessel became a ghost ship that the US Coast Guard decided to sink by firing at it with their machine guns. The Ryuun Maru was already due to be scrapped when the tsunami hit. Because of this, the Japanese owner had no desire to get it back. In the morning of the day of the tsunami, it was stationed at the pier. When the tsunami was finally over, the boat was gone. It became a ghost ship, drifting aimlessly through the ocean. But the reason the US Coast Guard got involved was that the fishing ship was heading towards shipping lanes used by cargo vessels sailing between North America and Asia. The fishing boat was first spotted by the Canadians in their water near British Columbia, but it soon drifted down closer to California. Rather than risking a shipping boat smacking into the thing and causing disaster, they just decided to sink it. After all, it was the definition of a ghost ship. It had no lights, there was nobody on board, and it was carrying 9,000 liters of diesel fuel. The best place for it, apparently, was at the bottom of the ocean. Number 4. The Nina Yacht. The Nina Yacht, a legendary 50-foot schooner, was once the flagship of the New York Yacht Club. This was in 2013, but then it disappeared without a trace, with the owner, his wife, their teenage son, and 4 of the crew members. The Nina left the Bay of Islands near New Zealand on May 29th, headed for Australia. It was only 1,500 miles away and should have taken the crew just 8 days. On June 12th, friends and family were worried because the vessel never showed up. Rescuers searched 737 nautical miles of ocean and found no sign of the boat or its crew. And this was bizarre because the search was extremely thorough. If the ship was out there, they should have found it. The only thing that made any sense was that the ship sank. The final communication that the ship had with the outside world was following a storm. They claimed that their storm sails were shredded and that they had been affected by the weather, though they didn't give any indication that they were in distress. Could their boat have sank abruptly because of unrealized damage? Or is there something more nefarious at work here, responsible for the vanishing of these 7 people? As of right now, nobody knows. Number 3. Belle Amica. When the twin-masted sail vessel, the Belle Amica, was discovered empty off the coast of Italy, police discovered a half-eaten meal, piles of clothes thrown across the floor, and charts of the Mediterranean Sea spread over the table. Nobody was on board, and there was no obvious place for them to have gone. The mystery was made even stranger by the fact that nobody knows who it belonged to. When it was found, the winds were pushing it against the rocky shore, threatening to destroy it. The Coast Guard worked together with the police to try and establish whether the yacht had been abandoned on purpose or if something stranger had happened. They were also working to try and find and identify the crew. The boat was not registered, and no vessels were reported missing. No people were reported missing either. The mystery still hasn't been solved. A spokesman at the Harbor Master's office was last quoted as saying that the discovery of the vessel was a complete mystery. But it seems they haven't been able to solve the mystery, as this happened in 2006, and the identities of whoever was on board have yet to be discovered. What happened here and where the boat even came from is anybody's guess. Number 2. High Aim 6. Investigators in Australia back in 2003 were trying to piece together what happened to the ship, the High Aim 6, between October 31st, when it left the port in Lukyu in Taiwan, and January 8th, when it was boarded by Navy personnel off the coast of Western Australia. The ship was Taiwanese-owned, and the best guess was that it ran out of fuel and left the unfortunate souls on board with no other option than to drift deeper and deeper into the Indian Ocean, then try to escape with lifeboats. However, this theory doesn't make a lot of sense, considering the boat was discovered to be filled with fuel and stocked with plenty of food and water. There was also no evidence that the lifeboats had been launched, leaving authorities with absolutely no idea what happened to those on board. They didn't flee, they didn't run out of supplies, and their vessels showed no evidence of damage or being boarded by pirates. In the hold of the boat was even a small catch of rotting fish. They had been in the middle of fishing when something caused all the crew members to vanish into thin air. Oh yeah, and the waters at the time of the crew vanishing were calm and serene. There was literally nothing that could have possibly happened to make them go overboard. To this day, the mystery has never been solved. And number 1, SS Sabrina. The SS Sabrina was built in 1873 at Whitstable in the United Kingdom. She was a sailing barge intended for trade on the River Plate in South America. But in October of 1917, she was found run aground on the French coast with her crew missing and no sign of them. She had sailed out of England under the command of Captain Martin with a crew bound for France. 2 days later, she was found without any damage to her hull or rigging, yet her crew was gone. At the time, it was thought that her crew had been stolen by a German submarine, which then fled the area before it was able to sink the SS Sabrina to get rid of the evidence. But there was no record of a German submarine doing this, which makes the theory a little shaky, unless, that is, the submarine with the stolen crew members was sunk by British forces before it had a chance to unload them. In any case, nobody knows what happened to the crew of the Sabrina. The ship was sunk in 1953 after being destroyed by a mysterious fire. Number 10. C-130 Hercules Warplane. In 2017, Lockheed's C-130 Hercules cargo aircraft was deliberately sunk off the coast of Amica, Jordan. But why? Well, for the fish. It's hoped the plane will become colonized by marine life and develop as an artificial reef. It rests in calm, clear waters 59 feet below the waves, with its tail nearly touching the water's surface. The Royal Jordanian Air Force donated the decommissioned C-130 to the Amica Special Economic Zone Authority, which oversees tourism in the region. After removing all dangerous materials, they lowered the 112-foot-long plane to the bottom of the Red Sea as a crowd gathered on shore to watch. Sadly, less than a year later, someone sabotaged the aircraft by riding on the side of it and damaging the interior. Hooligans. Conservationists were outraged by the act, which scraped off a layer of sediment that accumulated as part of the process of transforming into a reef. These habitats take a long time to form, and the vandalism set the waiting period back to square one. Speaking with the Jordan Times, Director General of the Royal Marine Conservation Society of Jordan, Ihab Aid, demanded better monitoring from the agency in charge of supervising the site. According to Commissioner of Tourism and Economic Affairs, Sharhabil Mahdi, the entire marine ecosystem benefits from creating an artificial reef, like the C-130 Hercules. Whenever we are able to add a new structure like this, the whole area benefits from the added habitat. and species diversity. Known for its ability to carry soldiers and cargo over long distances, the C-130 is one of the most popular planes of its time among militaries worldwide, according to Quartz correspondent Eric Olson. Since the 1950s, armed forces in over 70 countries have used C-130s. It's just so cool that so many amazing uses have come from one aircraft. Number 9. Boeing 737. Submerged vehicles are popular among wreck diving enthusiasts and often come with the added environmental benefits. In 2006, the non-profit Artificial Reef Society of British Columbia sank the frame of a retired Boeing 737 off Vancouver Island. The 97-foot-long aircraft sits 85 feet below the water's surface. Before it became a diving attraction, the plane flew for Air Canada. It was built during the 1970s and saw a lengthy 27-year career as a passenger jet. When the 737 was slated to be decommissioned in 2002, a specialist for the company named Fraser McLean called the ARSPC and asked if the organization was interested in using it as an artificial reef. He remembered news footage from when the group sank a ship for the same purpose and thought the aircraft might come in handy. Good call, McLean. Choosing a site and getting the plane there was not exactly an easy task. In fact, if the ARSPC knew how complicated the ordeal would be, it might have turned the offer down, according to its website. The journey to the 737's final resting place involved transporting it by truck, mounting it on support stands, and lowering it to the bottom of the Georgia Strait. But the massive undertaking paid off. According to a 2015 report, at least 117 marine species have made the sunken plane their home. Number 8. DDay Tanks. On June 6, 1944, 156,000 Allied troops stormed the coast of Normandy, France, in a mission to free France from Nazi control, famously known as D-Day. It was the largest seaborne invasion in history. The campaign was extremely successful, marking the beginning of the end of the war. But not everything went according to plan. That morning, a fleet of 29 amphibious tanks launched from Allied ships roughly 2.5 miles from shore. Known as duplex drive tanks, or DD Shermans, the modified tanks were outfitted with flotation devices that enabled them to bob, but they were only designed to withstand swells of up to 1 foot, and those in command had failed to think about the rough seas. The vehicles encountered 6-foot waves that they were not built to handle. The drivers did their best to reach dry land, and some came within 0.6 miles of the beach, but only 2 of the tanks actually made it. In 2000, a group of archaeologists explored the area's waters for the first time and found the submerged machines. They captured footage of the doomed vehicles sitting upright and on their side of the ocean floor, serving as an eerie yet emotional reminder of the lengths that soldiers go to for their country. Number 7. Train wreck. While traveling along a steep cliff next to Lake Superior in 1910, a Canadian Pacific Railroad cargo train derailed, meaning it went off its tracks. Its locomotive and several boxcars plunged into the water and sank 235 feet. 3 men tragically died in the accident. To this day, it's the only known train wreck in the Great Lakes. Over a century later in 2014, a diver named Terry Irvine found some of the sunken boxcars near the town of Marathon in Ontario. With Irvine's help, a group of shipwreck hunters discovered the locomotive. Using a remotely operated vehicle, they captured creepy footage of the train in its final resting place. The team had hoped to salvage the locomotive, but when they found it, they realized that it was too destroyed to remove from the lake. Have you ever been on a train before? What'd you think? Where'd you go? Tell us about it in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 6. SS Thistlegorm. The SS Thistlegorm was a British merchant navy ship that was sunk by German bombers during World War II. She went down in the Red Sea the year after she was built, completing only 3 successful voyages. During her short-lived career, the Thistlegorm carried steel rails, aircraft parts, grain, and rum. She traveled to the US, Argentina, and the West Indies. In 1941, the vessel departed Glasgow, Scotland, for Alexandria, Egypt, loaded up with armored vehicles, motorcycles, trucks, ammunition, guns, radio equipment, aircraft and railway parts, and 2 train locomotives. When a crash in the Suez Canal blocked the Thistlegorm from passing through, the ship docked at a safe anchorage off the Egyptian coast. Suspecting the additional Allied troops were sailing into Egypt, the Germans dispatched 2 bombers to find and destroy their vessel. The Thistlegorm was hit by both, causing some of the ammunition cargo to explode. 9 people aboard the ship died, and she sank to her watery grave. French explorer Jacques Cousteau discovered the wreck during the 1950s, but it was quickly forgotten. In the early 1990s, the coastal city of Sharm el-Sheikh opened the site to divers. The section that was blown off the 420-foot-long ship during the attack created a convenient opening that visitors can use for easy access to the inside, which still contains most of the cargo. Many divers consider the Thistlegorm to be the world's best wreck dive. At a depth of around 100 feet, it requires some advanced diving skills, but is shallow enough for visitors to forego special equipment. Number 5. Boeing 747 Jumbo Jet. The Boeing 747 was the world's first jumbo jet. During the 1960s, Boeing sought to make flying more affordable and relieve airport congestion. The best way to do this was to design an aircraft with a much larger carrying capacity than anything that existed at the time. At 231 feet long, with a 195-foot wingspan, the 747 was the world's largest passenger jet for over 30 years. The double-decker airplane remains iconic today for its massive size and the distinctive hump housing its upper level. The 747 is becoming less popular as a commercial airliner, but the country of Bahrain found a creative new use for the gargantuan plane. In 2019, the government sank a 747 into the Persian Gulf as a diving attraction, an artificial reef called Dive Bahrain. It's the world's largest underwater theme park. The decommissioned plane functions as the park's centerpiece and is the largest aircraft ever submerged, according to Tourism Minister Zayed bin Rashid Al Zayani. He reassured the public that the site is eco-friendly and promotes marine growth as many of the world's natural reefs die out. But some experts warn that the plane could corrode and lose its structural integrity, potentially putting aquatic life and divers' safety at risk. This could also release heavy metals and pollute the water, but developers moved forward with their plans, and the site is currently open to qualified divers. Number 4. A military museum. In 2019, Jordanian authorities lowered 19 decommissioned military vehicles into the Red Sea in hopes of attracting tourists to the nearby resort city of Aqaba. The collection of drowned hardware includes tanks, an ambulance, a military crane, a troop carrier, a combat helicopter, an anti-aircraft battery, and several guns. They're arranged in a tactical formation along a coral reef 92 feet underwater. The project was the brainchild of the Aqaba Special Economic Zone Authority, which has turned to wreck diving in recent years as a way to draw visitors and their money. In fact, most of the wrecks around Aqaba were sunk completely on purpose. The tradition of deliberately submerging vehicles also stems from the Jordanian royal family's passion for diving, which goes back generations. In 1985, the late King Abdallah ordered the sinking of a Spanish cargo vessel called the Cedar Pride. 3 years earlier, an accident had blasted a hole in the ship, leaving a half-submerged eyesore until the king decided it belonged on the sea bottom. An anti-aircraft tank became the second intentionally placed wreck off Aqaba in 1999. There are also a few sunken airplanes, a landing boat, and a crane barge. So if exploring waterlogged vehicles is your thing, Aqaba might be your type of place. Are you going? Number 3. Hilma Hooker. In 1984, a freighter ship called the Hilma Hooker began experiencing engine problems in the Caribbean Sea. Unaware that they were being watched by law enforcement, the crew had it towed to the port city of Kralande on the island of Bonaire. When the Hilma Hooker's captain failed to provide authorities with the proper registration documents, they inspected the ship and found a false bulkhead filled with 25,000 pounds of marijuana. Whoa! The suspects were detained, but the vessel's owner was never identified. Whoever it was, they were smart enough not to come forward, and the ship deteriorated as it sat neglected as evidence. The Hilma Hooker began taking on water, worried that it would sink, and tired of continuously pumping water out, the authorities moved the vessel away from the main dock. Hey, out of sight, out of mind, right? Just days later, the 236-foot-long ship rolled onto her side and hit the seafloor. Situated 95 feet underwater on a sand flat between two coral reef systems, the Hilma Hooker is one of the most popular diving sites in the Caribbean. While most of the ship's interior is off-limits to divers, the wreck is a spectacular sight thanks to the water's crystal-clear visibility. Number 2. Gunilda. Built at the turn of the 20th century, the Gunilda was a luxury yacht owned by a wealthy New Yorker named William L. Harkness. While touring Lake Superior in 1911 with family and friends, he failed to hire an experienced guide to navigate the 195-foot-long boat through an area filled with various islands and shoals. It was a disastrous decision that Harkness would come to regret. The Gunilda ran around on Copper Island, roughly 5 miles from the coastal city of Rossport, Ontario. Harkness hired a tugboat to salvage his yacht, but it was too late to save it. After being pulled free, the Gunilda rolled over and sank 280 feet to the bottom of the lake. The wreck was rediscovered in 1967. It's too deep for conventional diving, but a few seasoned pros have been lucky enough to see the perfectly preserved yacht firsthand. It looks more or less just like it did the day it went down, and is filled with remarkably intact artifacts, including furniture, a piano, and some lanterns. The Cousteau Society has described the Gunilda as the most beautiful shipwreck in the world. And number 1, Zenobia Wreck. The Swedish-built ferry MS Zenobia began her maiden voyage to Syria in May 1980 with 104 tractor-trailers of cargo aboard. After passing through the Strait of Gibraltar a few weeks later and stopping in Greece, the captain encountered steering problems. Soon enough, the ship began listing. Excess water was discovered in the ballast tanks. The crew pumped it out and continued towards Cyprus, assuming the problem was solved. By the time the Zenobia reached Larnaca, it had started listing again. Engineers determined that a software malfunction was pumping excess water into the tanks. Worried that the 571-foot-long ferry was a danger to other ships, local authorities ordered the captain to leave the harbor. He anchored offshore, and the list worsened, ultimately forcing the crew to abandon ship. According to witness reports, they returned to the harbor and visited a bar. From there, the crew members calmly watched the Zenobia capsize, taking $200 million worth of cargo down with it and scattering 100 trucks onto the sea floor. It's the largest ship to ever sink in the Mediterranean. Their unfazed behavior was odd, but things got even weirder when no investigation of the incident was carried out. Rumor has it that the ferry's owners never filed an insurance claim, and the cargo was never salvaged. People began to suspect that the Zenobia was sabotaged. One theory claims that Israeli and British secret services wrecked it because they thought it was carrying an illegal arms shipment for the Palestinian Liberation Organization. We may not ever know what happened, but the wreck is one of the world's most popular diving sites, attracting over 100,000 curious visitors every year. Number 10. SpongeBob and Patrick. A recent ocean expedition about a mile beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean made a pretty weird discovery. The expedition found SpongeBob SquarePants and his friend Patrick, who lives in a pineapple under the sea. Okay, maybe they weren't living in a pineapple, and it wasn't technically SpongeBob and Patrick, but they definitely found their doppelgangers. The Okeanos Explorer captured video of a sponge and a sea star sitting right beside each other, with the sponge looking like the yellow cartoon character, and the starfish looking like his best friend. One of the scientists watching the live feed from the submersible was Christopher Ma. He's the one that immediately noticed the underwater creature's uncanny resemblance to the beloved animated characters, and he tweeted the picture, which of course went viral. But here's where things get sinister. In this case, the sponge and the star were probably not actually friends. Researcher Christopher Ma says the sea stars actually feed on sponges in real life. The reason the starfish was discovered so close to the sponge is probably because the sponge was about to be the sea star's next meal. The reason the sponge was so bright yellow is because it has a chemical defense system that makes it turn yellow to keep the sea star from eating it. We don't know how things turned out because the underwater vehicle had to keep moving, but it's highly likely that Patrick ate SpongeBob for dinner. Number 9. Lake Como Treasures. There's a hidden world underneath Lake Como filled with all kinds of incredible treasures. Vintage cars, battle tanks, and even wrecked airplanes. It's one of the most stunning lakes in the world. At 1,394 feet between the Italian Alps and the Swiss Alps. It's also the deepest lake anywhere in all of Italy. Divers have discovered a huge collection of wreckage in this mysterious lake, including unexploded bombs and rusting motorcycles. There's a giant steamship rotting at the bottom of the lake too, a land cruiser, an abandoned gondola, and explorers have even found the tile floor of an ancient church that was submerged in the year 1400. According to underwater biologist Emilio Mancuso, there is a huge drop-off in the lake that used to be used for sinking cars, which is why there's such a huge vintage graveyard in the lake. Some divers believe a lot of them are actually stolen vehicles that people dumped in the water to get rid of the evidence. Number 8. Mayan funerary offerings. At the bottom of a giant sinkhole in Mexico, archaeologists have discovered funerary offerings. The sinkhole is known as a cenote, and this particular cenote was found near the incredible Mayan ruins of Chichen Itza. The funerary offerings consist of human bones, pottery vessels, knives, and jade beads. Experts say the offerings was made sometime around the 9th century as part of a ritual to bring rain during the dry season. The National Institute of Anthropology and History say that the ritual goes back to a time when the Mayan had suffered 2 very serious episodes of drought and were desperate to get water on their crops. To try and facilitate rain, the Mayans went deep into the underwater cave, which of course at the time had not been full of water, sacrificed 6 people, and left behind some treasures to appease the gods. Bada boom, bada bing. We wonder if it rained after that, but here's where things get even darker. Aside from the singular ritual, archaeologists found the human remains of at least 20 other people and 100 animals. This has probably been a very important cave for ritualistic ceremonies in the Maya culture before the cave was eventually flooded. Number 7. World War I submarine. A lost submarine from World War I has recently been discovered at the bottom of the ocean with 23 crew members still on board. The haunting wreckage is that of a German U-boat, and it was found off the coast in Belgium. The submarine sank over 100 years ago during a campaign to disrupt Allied shipping routes. At the time, the submarine was reported to have been sunk by an underwater mine, but its wreckage was never discovered. According to ABC News, the submarine was finally found stuck in the dirt at the bottom of the North Sea, about 98 feet deep. 23 of the crew members were still trapped inside of the vessel, which is a Type UB-2 U-boat, a small submarine that operated strictly in coastal waters. The crew was carrying 6 torpedoes. The crew is still sealed inside the submarine. Their bodies likely skeletons by now. Well, actually their bodies are definitely skeletons because it's been over a century. Number 6. Egyptian treasure. Marine researchers working off the northern coast of Egypt have recently made a few very unique discoveries involving some extremely rare treasures. A mission in 2021 conducted by a group of researchers from the European Institute of Underwater Archaeology discovered ancient Greek ceramics, as well as 2,400-year-old wicker baskets with fruit. But these were only the most recent discoveries in an underwater archaeological paradise. Before Alexander the Great founded his city of Alexandria in 331 BC, the largest port anywhere in the Mediterranean was a city called Thonis Heracleion. Today, the city is completely underwater in the Bay of Aboukir, with all of the artifacts being untouched in over 2,000 years. An earthquake devastated the city, and then it was literally sucked into the ocean by the succeeding tidal waves. A massive portion of the Nile Delta collapsed and fell into the sea. 2 cities were destroyed, Canopus and Thonis Heracleion, with the first being found in 1999 and the second a year later in 2000. Another significant discovery made by the team was the remains of a large tumulus, a Greek funerary area, along the northeast entrance canal of the submerged city. The tumulus was covered with elegant funerary offerings that dated back to the beginning of the 4th century BCE. While the ceramics and ancient fruit baskets are definitely amazing, there is a lot more down in the sunken city, from temple ruins to broken shipwrecks. Number 5. The Titanic. The wreckage of the Titanic was found on September 1st, 1985. But until just recently, the oceanographer who discovered the wrecked ocean liner, Robert Ballard, has kept the reason why it was found at all a secret. It's now been revealed that the Titanic was actually found because of a secret military operation. At the time, the United States Navy was investigating 2 wrecked nuclear submarines. The search for the Titanic was just a cover story for a secret Cold War mission. The Army desperately wanted to find and photograph its 2 nuclear submarines, but they didn't want the Russians to know what they were up to. So, because it was believed that the legendary Titanic was close to the 2 sunken subs, they used that as their excuse for snooping around in the deep ocean. Amazingly, the nuclear submarines were found, and with the leftover time, only 12 days, Robert was finally allowed to search for the Titanic. It only took him 9 days to find it. The rest is history, as the Titanic was immortalized 10 years later by James Cameron in his movie about the tragic sinking. Number 4. The Maraca Underwater Hotel. A few years ago, the world's very first underwater hotel suite opened, and it's nothing short of extraordinary. It's called the Maraca, and it was the first self-contained building to be completely submerged under the ocean. The beautiful villa is 2 stories tall and includes a master suite located approximately 16 feet beneath the surface of the ocean. The luxury hotel is encased within acrylic and offers unparalleled views of the wild marine environment. It's basically like diving in a glass-walled hotel room, but you don't even need to get wet. This experience is available only in the Maldives, and only for a small fortune. But still, the very fact that we as humans are now able to build self-sustainable houses underwater is pretty incredible. The hotel suite is more of a residence than a typical hotel room. It has bedrooms, a dining room, and an ocean level at the top with a swimming pool. In case you're tired of actually being under the water, you can just walk up the stairs and then swim in the pool while looking at the ocean, hugging you close. Plus, the surroundings have been kept as natural as possible, meaning you have full and uninterrupted views of the sea life. The building itself was constructed in Singapore and then transported to the Maldives and submerged. The room weighs about 600 tons and can be lifted and repositioned using a crane attached to a ship. Would you like to spend the night here? Let us know in the comments down below. Number 3. Alien Base. Something very strange has been spotted thanks to good old Google Earth and a user with eagle eyes. First of all, vlogger Brian Daniel recently unveiled satellite images of what appears to be an alien body washed up on the beach, with the beach having been evacuated and a small group of government officials standing around the alien body, looking as though they have no idea what to do with the thing. And as if an alien body wasn't creepy enough, Brian then tried to find where it had come from. Still using Google Maps, he managed to locate what appears to be an alien base off the coast of Greece, hidden underwater. But looking very carefully, one can see the obvious shape of a man-made structure, or maybe in this case, an alien-made structure. The ocean facility, according to Brian and other conspiracy theorists, is where UFOs have been hiding themselves while visiting Earth. It's very possible that the alien body also spotted in satellite images could have come from the underwater base and accidentally drowned in the Mediterranean Sea before being washed up on the beach. Keep in mind that there is no official evidence for any of these theories other than the satellite images. But you never know. This could just be the real deal. What if it is? Number 2. Blood red jellyfish. A mysterious underwater monster was recently spotted by researchers during a deep ocean adventure in the North Atlantic. The creature was found 2,300 feet under the surface. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, it could be a previously unidentified jellyfish. The creature was discovered with its body crimson red, as if literally formed out of nothing except liquid blood. It has 30 tentacles, a body shaped like a bell, and it lives at depths of up to 3,000 feet deep in the Atlantic Ocean. Nobody knows how many of these jellyfish live in the ocean, or what its characteristics are, only that it's blood red and slightly terrifying to look at. It's probably been around for millions and millions of years, and has just never been spotted before by any humans. Jellyfish have been around way before even dinosaurs walked the earth. They move by drifting on ocean currents and pulsing their bodies. And yes, they sting you with their tentacles. It's unknown whether the jellyfish is poisonous, but judging by the looks of it, it's highly likely that it is. And number 1. Roman ruins. For decades, fishermen off the coast of Naples were pulling up weird ancient artifacts in their fishing nets. As it turns out, these artifacts were from the ancient Roman city of Baiae, a kind of holiday resort for the high tier of Roman society. At least 7 emperors, including the notorious Nero and Julius Caesar, had villas here. The city was once described by the Roman poet Sextus Propertius as being a place of vice. In other words, it was a place where emperors and their friends went to party. It was basically the Roman equivalent of Epstein's Island. Today, the city is under 20 feet of water. It sank because of seismic activity that gradually pulled the whole entire area into the water. By the 4th century AD, the city had completely sunk. It's been a protected marine area ever since archaeologists realized what it was back in 2002, but it's hardly been explored. Some of the bigger ruins have been found because they stick so obviously out of the sand. But expert archaeologists say there could be thousands of more amazing artifacts and broken structures hidden deeper. There's a whole lost world down here in the murk, but archaeologists are having a tough time recovering the precious Roman relics. Thanks for watching. Which of these amazing underwater discoveries is your favorite? Have you ever found something cool in the ocean? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and come back again soon for another awesome video. See you next time.